I thought of something.
What?
We weren't really prudent when it came to the name of this show.
Yeah, that's becoming apparent.
Well, it's not the fact that she's not necessarily napping right now. It's what if we have another child? Are we renaming the podcast?
I guess. I don't know.
Or do we only do this when our firstborn?
Well, she's only going to nap for so long.
Well, that's also...
she's going to drop her nap within the next year, probably.
Well, that's also what I was thinking. So if she drops her nap and within the next year, do we wait until she's a teenager and then we find out one day she's napping? We're like, oh, we can go record a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess.
Hey, do you have a nap in your plans today, ladies?
Otherwise, we're just going to be doing them in the evenings, I guess, and trying to muster up the energy.
That being said, welcome to While She's Napping. I am Adam.
And I'm Cindy.
And hey, we've hit a COVID milestone as parents.
Oh, the birthday?
We had a drive-by beep beep birthday
parade.
Parade. And, first of all, shout out to those that participated. If you're listening to this and you're like, well, how come I wasn't invited? It was like a family type of thing. So, I don't know what else to tell you. Anyways, it was fun. It was pretty cool. I didn't think it was going to be that eventful, but,
Yeah, I feel bad for what we said about the neighbors a few weeks ago.
Are you thinking they're listening?
No,
is this just in case they are?
No, it was just my own reflection of, especially your take on it and how, you expressed you were all set.
Let's give some backstory. So we, for our daughter, she's a hardcore, I guess, Sesame Street fan.
Yeah, as hardcore as you can be at age 2.
That too. She loves Elmo, and we hired a pretty professional looking Elmo, someone in an Elmo costume. And it's not one of those like knockoff creepy smile Elmos. Like you've seen
legit.
The creepy smile Mickey Mouses that look like they're on acid. This Elmo looked legit. And Elmo was accompanied by some other woman who was super nice, and she too was dancing along. They had a Bluetooth speaker and they were playing all Elmo jams. It was really cool. Our daughter was mesmerized
and dancing, and she loved it.
Unlike Santa in December, where she cried her eyes out, she was a little apprehensive at first. She was a little trepidatious, but then I told her to give Elmo a high five, and she, instead of slapping his hand, she touched it, and pulled back and recoiled. But
well, when she first saw him walking up, he was holding a little gift bag and a balloon, and the first thing she said was, "Balloon!"
Yeah,
she was more excited about the balloon than Elmo.
So they parked down the street. I'm on the doorstep, filming Elmo from afar and looking for her reaction, and I'm tearing up because it's emotional, given the circumstances and whatnot, and we knew she was going to be so excited because we were planting seeds all week. Like, who's your best friend?
Right.
Elmo's your best friend? Okay. And then Elmo comes, over the horizon and is within visual distance, and she just cares about the balloon that Elmo is holding.
But then once people in the neighborhood started realizing what was going on,
well, we should note that Elmo's world was on
blasting.
11 from these people. With the
and it was a beautiful day out,
yes.
So people were outside in their yards and walking and all that kind of thing. And everybody came out and started cheering and saying happy birthday and whistling and just
people
made
were
it.
Beeping that weren't part of the parade.
Yeah,
cool.
It was really cool.
And the next door neighbors took it upon themselves nicely to record the occasion.
They recorded the whole parade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess you exchanged contact information for the sole purpose of getting that video.
So she could text me the video. Yeah.
We're going to one day wake up. Hey, what are you guys doing?
It's like a nightmare.
Switching it up, we got Zevia today.
Mm-hmm. Well, because apparently I didn't buy seltzer this week. I bought some naturally sweetened orange soda.
It was like NWO too sweet.
Yeah.
Way too sweet.
Yeah, my bad.
It's all good. All right. So last week we have some things to bury here before we proceed with today's topic. It looks like people aren't smartened up to the fact that Limp Bizkit is the shit.
I'm pretty sure we can finally put an end to that debate, Adam. Really.
I'm not.
You're not.
This is the tiniest hill I am going to die on.
You'll never admit defeat.
No, not with this.
All right. Well, I think it was pretty overwhelming. The only people that voted for Limp Bizkit, I think it was like 12% on the Facebook poll for Limp Bizkit, and that was like you and our one other friend who was there the night that this happened.
It's double digits.
Yeah, I don't know what the total count was.
It's double digits.
Yeah.
No, the friend I work with said, I'm voting for Limp Bizkit.
Just for
Britney
vote of
Spears.
support.
That's what he said.
Yeah. Just moral support.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I don't care. It's Limp Bizkit. But hey, thanks for the positive feedback. We got a couple of 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Keep that train going. So if you're listening to this for the first time, we welcome you. If you stumbled upon this through Twitter, Instagram, or a referral through a friend or Reddit, welcome to the show. Today's topic, we're going to talk about the taboo subject of religion, and I guess us as non-believers. I'll get to that in a bit. But if you enjoy what you hear, we'd appreciate it if you give us 5 stars and a quick review on Apple Podcasts, or if there's a review platform or a rating system on the podcast platform that you listen to this on, we'd appreciate it if you gave us an A+ rating right off the bat. Don't even think about it. Don't even evaluate our talents or lack thereof. Just give us an A+. Also, we're on Twitter if you want to interact with us there. I'm trying to get a little bit more active there. It's just very difficult with everything that's going on. But you can hit us up at She's Napping Pod. You can hit us up on the Facebook. Cindy's doing an outstanding job running ship over there. Facebook.com/whileshe'snapping. We also have a .com, whileshe'snapping.com, if you want a nice quick avenue to all the episodes right there. Our podcast host gives us a free website, so we utilized it. Instagram.com/whileshe'snapping or at whileshe'snapping, however you use the Instagram. Or if you want some anonymity, you can email us at
whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
So yeah, you can hit us up there. Last week we had a lot of positive reviews and feedback. Actually, people have talked to us, at least me, I don't know about you, but said that was probably the funnest episode or most fun episode they've listened to.
Yeah, it was fun for us too.
I don't know if it's as good as the Rhode Island episode. That to me is just fun.
That was fun too. But yeah, I think a lot of people also waited on some of the, I think they were like live commenting on one of the
real time.
Yeah, while they were listening to the episode, answering some of the things that we couldn't remember and people's names and characters and things that we were blanking on. So thanks for telling us what those were.
Yeah, shout out to the people that reminded me that BB Bluff
was
the chick I couldn't remember from Doug.
Yeah. And Mike O'Malley was
Michael
the host
O'Malley,
that
yes.
we couldn't remember.
Yes. Bring the little mama. So anyways, we'd like to thank people from all around the world, the United States, Canada, Australia, Spain, specifically in the U.S., Rhode Island, Massachusetts, California, Florida, New Hampshire, Louisiana, Connecticut, Michigan, Ohio, Virginia, New York, Oregon, Texas, and again, parts unknown. We get a pretty decent response. 14.6% of our listenership comes from parts unknown. The entire Ultimate Warrior family is listening to us, but of course, predominantly from Rhode Island, so represent Little Rhodey. So, as I said, this is pretty much your coming out party, it seems. Like on air. I don't know. Is it?
I mean, I've never had any sort of platform similar to this to like specifically say what we're going to say or talk about it in any sort of public forum. So I guess from that sense, yeah.
So it should be noted that we are, I don't know that I'd classify us or myself, I can't speak for you, but I don't know if I can classify myself as a true to the fucking heart atheist. I'll get to my, point of view in a bit. And I have to say that otherwise I avoid this topic like the plague. I don't like talking about it. I feel that people's personal beliefs when it comes to the spiritual realm or lack thereof is very fluid. It definitely tends to shift as you get older. So like when someone stakes that claim into the ground and says, I am this, typically a couple years later, they're more than likely like, oh, I'm kind of different now or something. Like it changes. So that being said, that's a really good jump off point. So let's start with you. Let's talk about your how you were raised under, it wasn't Catholic, right? It was Episcopalian?
No, Episcopalian, yep.
Episcopalian umbrella, Christian sect of the religion. Take it to town. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I grew up in a family that I did attend church every week. It was a normal part of our routine. But I did only go with one parent. I had one parent who's, seriously practicing Christian, and it was very important for us to be there every week. And it's my mom, and she was also involved in the Sunday school. She taught Sunday school. I was part of the youth group. I had all my sacraments. I had my communion. I was confirmed when I was 16. And I was really involved with the church too, and all of the, community participation type things.
You went to like summer camp for church, right?
I did go to Jesus camp. Yep.
But was it like legit Jesus camp, or was it like...
I don't know. I feel like, so when I say that, there's a Netflix documentary now called Jesus Camp, which is, have you seen it?
No.
Okay, so it's like...
If I'm not watching it with you, I'm not watching it.
Yeah. Well, that's not always true. You Netflix cheat on me sometimes.
But it's when we start a series...
and I fall asleep.
And I'm like, I'm just going to keep watching. I never start a series without you.
Okay, fine. Well, this isn't a series. It was just a single documentary. And it was called Jesus Camp. And it's like super extreme, like cult-like, like more like the extreme evangelical side.
It's a propaganda-filled camp.
Pretty much, yeah. So this camp was not like that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it was, but it was in a Christian camp.
It was kind of like
camp.
Catholic, even though it's not Catholic, but I'm jumping ahead, but you've been to Catholic schools, like
right.
Catholic school, but camp. It wasn't the focus of the camp.
I mean, it was mostly just like a summer camp, but we had service every day. There was prayer before the meals.
Right, but
it was integrated. Like
it was
the
like a Jesus activity every...
exactly,
yeah.
Right. It was kind of like an underlying theme, but it was a summer camp.
Sure.
We learned music, games, we went swimming, did outdoor activities, whatever. But it had that woven in throughout. So yeah, I was really involved with my church all through my life up until pretty much probably when I was around 18, probably when I went to college. And we always celebrated all of the Christian holidays. We did Easter and Christmas and all that. It was a big deal. Palm Sunday, like the whole thing.
Well, rewind. So it should be noted that you did not go to a private slash religious school until high school.
Right.
And
I was
at
in
that
public
point,
school.
you went to a Catholic school, as I alluded to.
Yep. I was in K through 8 public school. And then my parents made the decision to send me to a private high school because the town that I was living in, the high school wasn't accredited at the time. So it was
Is it still not?
I don't know. I think it's gone back and forth. I don't know what it is right now.
Right. Well, yeah. So that is, it's not atypical, right? People have adjustment periods throughout their lives. And it's not, going to a Catholic school myself pretty much my entire life, seeing people of other faiths wasn't necessarily unusual. Was there some...
I thought it was.
Not unusual. For me, no.
Well, so you're referring to when you were in K through 8 or
Same.
The high school that we went
K
to?
Through 12.
I felt like in high school that I was a minority by the fact that I wasn't Catholic, brought up Catholic, even though I was Christian. Yeah, just in general. I didn't think there was a lot of diversity there. I can guarantee
you the students did not give a shit.
No, but they were raised Catholic.
Yeah, but they don't care.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, there was not a lot of diversity in the religious background of the students.
Sure. No. Maybe they weren't aware of the different sects of Christianity, but I'm sure they just didn't care that you
No,
weren't
I'm not
Catholic,
saying I was discriminated against or anything like that for not being Catholic. I'm just saying I thought it was pretty rare for someone who was not brought up Catholic to go to the Catholic school.
So you were pretty heavily deep into the whole Jesus thing growing up. Because for me, and again, I don't want to jump too much ahead, but for me, when I was a kid, I never necessarily believed it. I was just like, this is what you got to do. Yeah, I wasn't presented any other option.
Right. I mean, I wasn't really either. And I don't really know if I consciously thought about it as like, yes, I believe this and I feel like this is it. I just think it was It was just what you did. And I enjoyed going to my church. I enjoyed the people that I knew, the community and all of that, and all of the associated activities that I did. It was fun. And it, so I don't think it was the religion itself that kept me going back. It was everything else tied into it.
Well, okay. So what other positives do you extrapolate from the religion, and why does, in your opinion, Christianity get a bad rep as a reflection on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Okay.
So I think from a values standpoint, I think there's a lot there. I think I took away a lot of really important core values that helped shape who I am. Like I said, the importance of community, being generous, doing things for other people, having empathy and compassion, and all of those things, like the basic lessons that you learn as a Christian, I don't see any harm in that. I think I'm glad that I had that. But I think so there was a time, probably when I was around 18-ish. So this kind of like when I started moving out of high school into the college age. I did go to an evangelical church a few times. Ugh, I know. I'm sorry. I there may be people listening who consider themselves evangelical Christians, and it's not anything personal. It's just, for me, I remember going.
It's kind of personal.
Because I feel like like you said, everyone's at different stages, and I feel like there are some people who take it super to the extreme, like the example of that documentary. But then I think there are other people who just, for whatever reason, feel like they fit there, and it is a positive thing for them. And so I don't judge people for that, but I felt like a cult. Full stop.
Because it is.
But I'm just saying, like, yeah. And
because it is.
I even did the whole, like, they had me go, it was like the second time I went, they had me go up and, like, they were going to do a blessing. And so for what I remember growing up, that was just like a very simple, it was like kind of like when you went up for communion or whatever, like, especially before you had your communion and they would give you a blessing. They, like, put their hand on my forehead and, like, spoke in tongues. And there were, like, several different lines of, pastors giving the blessings and people receiving the blessings, and people on either side of me, and the other lines were, like, falling over, like how you see on.
That's fucked up.
It was so bizarre. And in my head, I'm like, am I supposed to act like this is doing something? I have no fucking idea what you're saying to me.
So
like,
you recognize the
my bullshit meter was off the radar. Yeah. But again, I felt like the people who introduced me to it, I knew were, like, they were good people. They had done a lot for me. They were super kind and generous. And I felt like it was an affront to them if I rejected it.
Yeah.
And that's how they suck you in. Yeah, but I feel like I don't know. It was like, I felt like I was part of this family. Like, it was just, I don't know. It's so creepy. I mean, we talked about.
That is how you get into a cult.
I know. I know. It's so funny. This is so parallel to what we talked about on the MLM episode, and how I felt like that sense of belonging and community, and that's what drew me in. It was very similar. So I think I only went back one other time after that blessing incident. And then I was like, I can't do this. Like, I cannot. Yeah, this is not for me.
So, as you said that you started, I guess, exploring other things or were open to other things by 18. Before that, when you were in high school, did you have a sort of conflict with the Catholicism in that 4-year period with your Episcopalian faith, I guess you could say?
A little bit, but I think looking back in hindsight, they were pretty superficial. Like, I felt like there were like we say the Lord's Prayer different. Like, there were little, but ultimately, like, Episcopalian and Catholic.
Now, I'm a Catholic. Well, I was raised Catholic for the better portion of my life, or I guess half of it now. Still don't know what the fuck that is.
Yes, the Our Father.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We never called it the Lord's Prayer.
I'm pretty sure it's called the Lord's Prayer.
Maybe that's a 2000 thing.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm
a little rusty on my Christianity, but that was slightly different. And but really, Episcopalian and Catholic is not that different, with the exception of things like women can be priests. Well, not priests, but pastors or rectors or whatever. So there were things like that I felt a little bit like almost offended by, like, especially with the like LGBTQ stuff. Like the Episcopalian Church is very accepting of that, and
Right.
like I didn't like how strict the Catholic religion felt compared to even those some of the minor differences.
And then you decided or found out this isn't for me.
Yeah, well, and I will also say the timeline of when I started exploring that evangelical church, I was also going through some pretty tough things
Sure.
at that point in my life. So I was very vulnerable.
Sure.
But that kind of like shook up everything, I think. And once I saw that for what it was, it like kind of made me look back on, well, how different is this really from some of the other like rituals and how it feels being in a church service of any denomination.
Right. And that's when you were like, no longer for me.
Pretty much. I mean, I just started to question everything and question, even though I still believe in some of the core values and I see how valuable those lessons are, I realized I don't believe the things that make you a Christian.
I feel you. And that's where I pretty much struggle. And you know, I know we're going to talk about raising our daughter and whatnot towards the second half of the show. But, you know, for me, it's, you can have all those things. You can have those core values without the fear of God. And that's what bothers me when it comes to Catholicism or Christianity, is that you don't need it. You don't need, you don't necessarily need an ultimate being's approval or an offspring, quote unquote, of that being's approval to function. You really don't. And you don't need that fear or that sort of admiration or what I don't know what the word I'm looking for right here, that acknowledgement, I should say, from Jesus or God or you know, whatever, Yahweh, JC, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't need it. But I just feel that if you just teach people good core values without that sort of fear, the result will end up being the same. And for me, I'm not arrogant enough. I should say this. And it when you posted that on Facebook, I didn't say anything because like it sort of made me reflect and had to think about it up until this point. I don't necessarily consider myself atheist because I don't know that I'm arrogant enough to say for sure this doesn't exist. Like, I feel that's very arrogant of me to say, is that there is no thing. I'm more like agnostic to that.
Yeah.
Like I'm open to the possibility. Just show me the evidence. Show me some evidence that isn't mystical.
But that doesn't exist when it comes to
sure.
religion.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
You believe because you believe. Like, that's part of it.
Right. And for me, there's this default setting that I feel human beings are prone to. And everybody is prone to it, whether you want to admit it or not, especially in like Western culture, very prone to a default setting of no matter what is going on, you have this assumption or your viewpoint is that you are the absolute center of everything. And sometimes it's innocent, sometimes it's not, but the way you I'm not saying you specifically, but in a way, you specifically, everyone. Mm-hmm. Is they describe things as, you know, like you consider an event, you consider a moment in time or a feeling or something. It's, well, that made me feel this way, or this person made me feel this way, or I wasn't there for that event, or I remember how I felt when that event happened. It's almost like the world is operating for you when you operate with it. And I feel that Christianity specifically really amplifies that default setting. It might just be better if I just talk about my background first, and then we can get back to this weird concept. So I was raised, I shouldn't even say I was raised Catholic. I was placed into Catholic school. And I think a large portion of that is, you know, similar to sort of how I feel, not to, you know, bury the lead here. But it was close. It's a safe school, and I can't speak for public school, but I know Catholic school where I went definitely implements those sort of core values.
But did your family go to mass on a regular basis?
No, it was like an irregular basis.
I think it's interesting that I grew up going to public school up until high school and I was a regular churchgoer, and you were in private Catholic school and never went to church.
Yeah, Catholics are typically like holiday Catholics, holiday practicing. They don't necessarily.
I wouldn't say typically. I wouldn't lump everybody together, but I do think that happens.
Okay,
yeah,
sure, maybe not typically, but it's not unheard of.
Right.
So I went to Catholic school from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. The plan was for me to hopefully get into classical high school here in Providence, Rhode Island, which is as far as I'm concerned, I could be wrong about this, as far as I know, I should say, it's the only public high school in Rhode Island that you have to get accepted into. Mm-hmm. So the standards are high to get into classical. It's not like you can just go if you live in Providence. I didn't get in. So I did get into a pretty big Catholic school here. It's very expensive now. It wasn't really expensive. It still was
comparatively, but it's
relatively
crazy now,
it wasn't.
I guess
comparatively,
it was
sure.
expensive for our family.
Sure, but like right now, it's like college tuition.
I know, it's crazy.
So I ended up going there again because this high school, colleges usually look for the name, and that's what it boils down to. I can just say I went to LaSalle Academy, and colleges, if they see LaSalle Academy, right or wrong, they'll sort of prioritize that when it comes to the Rhode Island region. I don't know how prevalent that is today, but when I graduated in 2004, that's how it was. Anyway, so I went to Catholic high school from freshman to senior year. I never bought into it. Like I said earlier, I was the guy in religion class or church when I went. That was just this story time. Yeah. I never had like a deep connection with Jesus or God. It was just, this is something I have to do. Mm-hmm. So for you, maybe it was fun and you enjoyed the community thing. With my mom, who was the one that usually took us, she like forced us to go. So it was like, I have to go to fucking church.
I think I did when I was younger. That's how it was. I remember my mom like having to pull us out of bed to go. But once I got into kind of like my early teens and I was doing like youth group and the camp and stuff like that, it was because I made friends and it was like a social thing to do.
Yeah, I never went when I was in high school voluntarily. Yeah. Never.
Well, once I got to high school, I think that's actually probably where it started. Not so much that's what the evangelical thing happened when I left high school, but even before that, because of the differences between Catholic high school and what I was observing there compared to how it was with my upbringing in the Episcopalian church, I remember being like weirded out by it. Like that shook up. I think that was the beginning of things getting shaken up for me.
Yeah, because you were introduced to an alternative.
Yeah, but I remember even though it wasn't that different from the just different denomination of Christianity that I was brought up in, I remember eye rolling at a lot. Like I started seeing it like you did, like, oh, we're going to chapel, it's story time. Yeah. Or like we used to have to do confession like during the school day. They would take us to the chapel and do confession. Confession isn't a thing in Episcopalian.
Oh, so this is in
either.
High school you're talking about.
Yeah, in high school they were like asking me to go to confession. I'm like, that's not even part of my religion.
Right.
Like I'm a Christian, but I don't do confession. Like I'm just going to sit here. And that's where it started with this like sort of like rebellious thing.
Yeah. When I was young, I used to have to like make up sins. Not that I didn't do some stupid shit when I was a kid, but it was just
disingenuous.
I was like, oh, I need to just, what's the line that I need to, like, what's today? It's, oh, I lied to my mom. That's a good one.
Well, the guilt thing in the Catholic religion is apparently like really strong. Yeah, that wasn't like that in Episcopalian
But they were like, you have to go to the altar and say 3 Hail Marys. And halfway through the first one, I'm not fucking doing this.
And you're like, all better.
Yeah, no, I was just, but.
Were you just singing Limp Bizkit lyrics in the back of your
No, this was, but I never believed it. Like, I never had the sense that I was going into the pew or whatever and kneeling down. I was like, all right, cleansed.
You didn't feel like reverent or connected. See, that's the thing. Growing up, I did. There were times, like I have vivid memories of certain masses where I felt so at peace and like connected with something. I don't know what I feel like prayer is just a form of meditation, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Like I feel like it has a very similar result. And so I think that's probably like I feel similar to how like those memories I have of that feeling is similar to the feeling I've had when I have meditated or done yoga or like just had, like that's what it is. I'm convinced that that's what it is at this point.
I just don't know that you need it. I don't like the aspect of having to be afraid of something or be afraid of consequences, because when it comes to religion, everything that you do, if you break it down to its core, everything that you do is for the end, right? It's not necessarily that I'm doing this because I'm a good person.
It's to get to heaven.
It's the end. And that's what I'm talking about, the default setting. It's I need to do this for me at the end of it.
To be forgiven of my sins.
It's all about life after death. It's never about life before death. And that to me is unfortunate because, you could make this life, these experiences that are pretty much, the experiences themselves are sort of a toss-up, but like, I say this really apprehensively because if someone has a really terrible life or something's going bad for them, this doesn't necessarily apply, but for someone in my circumstances, like life is wonderful. It's just wonderful. And I couldn't imagine not being around. Like, I remember when my dad died, my buddy's mom came up to me at the funeral and we did the whole Catholic thing because that's what my mom wanted. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I had my buddy's mom come up to me. She's like, he's looking down at you in heaven. And as a polite person, and everyone else that says that to me, I'm like, sure. Like, yeah, I'm not going to get into a verbal beef with someone at a funeral. Yeah. But I'm thinking to myself, like, when I evaluate it, I sure fucking hope not. Because if my dad is looking down at me in heaven, he is suffering. He is suffering because he does not want to be there. He wants to be here. And that's what I mean. Like, that's what makes it so warped to me. Like, why would you not want to be with the people you love? Why would you want to be in an atmosphere and not be able to communicate with them, not be able to touch them? That doesn't sound heavenly to me.
Well, I think there's an extension of that is that when a loved one that dies is looking down on you, that whole concept is they are also watching out for you. They are protecting you. So even though they can't physically be here with you
godly?
Anymore.
Like, that's the
but
thing.
I feel like that's what, but people like do that. Like,
see, I'm very scientific about some sort of afterlife. Like, I don't necessarily think, and again, I'm not arrogant enough to say that my dad is watching my every move. Like, that is so self-centered to the point where I'm like, everything, or anybody in heaven, or God, or whatever, is like, you're watching that video, you're looking at that porn, I don't know. Like, to me, it's just, no, I think if there is a God, he has so much, or she has so much other shit to deal with right now, other than my first world problems, and that's what makes it so messed up. That's the default setting.
I think that's what makes you an atheist, is you don't think that there's a being like that exists that's taking care of all the shit.
But I do believe in energy, and I know scientifically you can't destroy energy.
Yeah.
So when a human body dies, that energy prevails. I'm not saying my dad is conscious of things, or I believe that anybody that dies is conscious, but there is, like, which is why I'm like sort of leaning agnostic. There is that overwhelming feeling of he's around.
So it's more of a spiritual thing.
No, it's more like a scientific thing. Like, I feel not the presence of his body or the presence of his consciousness. It's just there's a part of him literally in me. Scientifically, there's a part of him, DNA, in me. And that will never go. Yeah. So, like, there's that sort of connection. Whether that's it's the DNA, the literal DNA that connects me to that. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the connection. Maybe it's not an energetic thing. But for me, it's just the whole heaven aspect, the whole God aspect, the whole Jesus aspect. I just can't get behind it. I can't.
Yeah. Well, and because I feel like a lot of it is just reciting words. And I know it means a lot to some people, but I agree. I think if you can get to a place where it's meaningful for you personally, and whatever that means for you has value, but reciting 3 Hail Marys so that someone can forgive you for telling a lie.
Yeah, it's nonsense. Like, for me, and no disrespect if you believe that. Like, I'm only speaking for myself. For me, it doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah.
If, of course, for you, listener, and this is something that, you're really attached to and you really feel a sense of spirituality for it, we can disagree, but of course, like, as long as you're not hurting anybody, that's fine.
Right, there's no harm. It's just we've had experiences, and at least I've had, various experiences in different forms of religion, and that's where I
will say that I am very grateful for going to, not just because it's a private education and the money that my parents had to spend for, but I do think that there is a sense of safety simply locking the school doors. I don't know if public schools have begun to do that as a result of...
it's a different world now. Yeah.
Right. But when I was going to high school, like public school doors, you can just walk in anybody.
No, now it's not like that.
But I do appreciate that, and I understand the value of it, is that there was a sense of at least an attempt to implement core values and to really drill them into you. And again, it wasn't overwhelming. Maybe this is an East Coast thing. I don't know. It was an overwhelming sense of God's watching you. You're going to be punished. Like the fear aspect wasn't there.
The fact that at the beginning of every class we had to say a prayer.
But see, I just thought that is very cultish. That's very propaganda-like. But for me, I was just like, oh, shit, we got to do.
Yeah.
I never...
Well, because you always had it. I didn't have to do that until 9th grade. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like,
I don't remember doing it.
You don't remember doing it?
No. Before high school.
Oh, you didn't have a similar
thing? I don't know.
Thing?
Maybe I did. Yeah. I know we had to do it in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we did it before every class. Because when in the private school that I went to in middle school, we just stayed in the same room.
Right.
And just
you
switched
weren't
out
rotating
books.
between
right.
classes. Yeah.
So I didn't... But, look, for me, it's more of a... I don't even know. Like, I know I'm not Christian. I know I'm not, any of the major Judeo-Christian religions. I don't really buy into it. Muslim, even. I'm not there. But I just don't know. I'd be very much open to the evidence. If someone can give me some sort of empirical evidence based on deductive reasoning for the existence of a higher power, I'm all for it. Like, I'd love to see it. Which is why I don't necessarily consider myself an atheist, because I feel like an atheist would just dismiss it and be like, this is nonsense.
Maybe. I think that you can always, like you said at the very beginning, like if you pin yourself as this thing, that's what you are. But I don't think that's, like, I was a Christian. I was confirmed in the Episcopal Church. I'm not a Christian anymore.
Right. Yeah.
It can change.
Yeah, I guess. I just, for me, it's, I'm open to it, but I guess the closest thing that I have read or researched on that really resonates with me, that if I'm going to be spiritual about it, then I'm like, okay, like I could see that, is deism, where God creates everything and he's like, I'm out. Like, you guys
like
are on your own.
Ultimate free will.
Like, you are on your... No, it's not like you have free... I just don't care. Like, I literally put up some random dominoes, I snapped them, and I walked away. And this is the result.
Like,
and, like,
the
I don't
Big Bang?
care. I'm not watching.
Like, God made the Big Bang
I have
happen,
dominoes
then...
over here, like, to play with. Like, you're old news. And I don't respond to prayer. I don't respond to any... I just... This is just an unfortunate consequences of me having a fun time, and this is what happened. Like, to me, that makes a little bit more sense than some ultimate thing paying attention to my petty problem that I feel so deeply about, when there are people on the other side of the world that are suffering.
But that's why I think people will come back and say, but God is all powerful. You can't think of it as like you're.
But
in,
is
like,
he weighing my I need this A+ God, like I need it to graduate high school, compared to the starving child?
Yeah, but I don't think there's like, for people who believe in that, I don't think there's a finite number of things that God can address. It's infinite. His power is infinite. He can pay attention to all those things at the same time and give it whatever.
That's
no,
just
I
too
know,
convenient.
but I think that's what the belief is.
Sure. Point I'm trying to make is escape the default setting. All right, hang tight. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, and we'll get to the poll. Hang tight. So do you want to talk about the poll that we put up on Facebook?
Yeah, so we can only do 2 choices on a Facebook poll. So we recognize that there's a lot of options here, and as we've described, I attended a combination, public school up until 8th grade, and then private school in high school. And then we both went to public colleges. We didn't even mention that, but
Oh,
so the poll was, did you attend public or private school? We're trying to get a sense of where people fall, and I encouraged people to comment if it was something else, if they were homeschooled, went to a charter school, or did a combination of public and private like I did. And public school was 71%, 29% private school. But there were several comments from people who had some combination of the two, similar to me.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me because, like, again, I think the natural inclination is, I'm just like, if you're living in a specific town or city or whatnot, obviously they have some sort of public education, and you're like, this is just where I'm going. Like,
it's not always a choice. There are some families who are in an economic
yeah.
situation where the private school is not an option, or it depends on what town or school district you live in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, my high school wasn't accredited at the time, so that's what prompted my parents to even explore private school.
Right.
So some people might not even think of that option, especially if they're not practicing Catholics. They're not going to go explore a Catholic private school if they have a really good public school available to them. But so we are privileged to be in a position where we can even consider the choice of, do we want to send her to a private school or go with the public school? And there's a ton of variables in that conversation. We've been talking about it forever.
Well, first of all, it should be noted that, strangely enough, her daycare cost is more expensive than what a private school cost would be.
Elementary, yeah.
At least for elementary school.
Right.
So that's what, up until fourth, third, fifth?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Middle school. Yeah.
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 So, right.
So
daycare,
K through
the
fifth,
cost
yeah.
of daycare is insane. But so in a sense, we're like, well, even if we send her to private school, we'll be saving money.
Yes.
I mean, but still, it's an expense that is maybe not necessary if we have a decent public school system in our town, and we don't really feel strongly about the religious aspect, and we don't plan to attend a mass at the church that's associated with the school on a regular basis or be involved in the church. So what is it about the private school that would be appealing to us? Like, what would make us make that decision?
So for me, it's safety, number one. I feel that not impossible, but, and again, this may be a small sample size kind of thing, but when it comes to gun violence, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but when it comes to gun violence, especially in a school setting, the majority, at least all in my recollection, that doesn't mean they don't exist outside of it, they most certainly can, were in public schools. I can't think of an example when this happened at a private school, personally, off the top of my dome. When you think of the hot button ones like Columbine, or what was the one in Connecticut with the kids? Sandy Hook. And
there was one at an Amish
San Bernardino?
school. San Bernardino. That wasn't a school. I don't think.
All right.
I think that was an office.
Okay, sure.
But there was the Amish school not that long ago, but that you're right. It's rare.
It's very rare for it to happen at a private school. And I think that's because this is Dr. Adam talking, so I have no idea what I'm talking about. This is complete guesswork. A lot of the things and the social anxieties that people deal with in public schools, I think a lot of it has to do with social cliques. And these social cliques I think are enhanced when it comes to the aesthetics, when it comes to things that are so meaningless and just sort of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Superficial?
Yeah. Like as what you wear and stuff.
Okay. That's where you're going with this.
Yes.
I was going to say, do you think cliques didn't exist?
No. Of course they exist in private schools for sure. But I think because of, people can showcase their wealth and whatnot more so in a public school setting than a private school setting. Because at least where I went private school, everyone's wearing the same thing.
Yeah. But so here's where I think my perspective is a little bit unique, because I was in both public and private, although it was at different times in my life, so different things stick out. So obviously in elementary school, it's whatever, we're kids. I didn't really notice anything like that. But in middle school was rough for me in public school. There were a lot of cliques. That was the time, and maybe it was just a function of the age, I don't know, but that was when I felt the most pressure to like try to fit in and look a certain way, and being judged by my clothes to some extent. Yeah. But I think in high school that happened too, but it wasn't with the clothes because everyone wore a uniform, but people flaunted their wealth or their status or their associations by other things. Like it was all about accessories. Like I knew like all the popular girls had like the Coach purses or like it was just, I don't think the uniform did all that much to disguise that.
I think it mitigated a little bit. It has to, right? Because you're not necessarily flaunting your wealth every day with new clothes and stuff. Like think about the people that are not fortunate to be able to afford like high quality clothes.
Yeah.
And they're in like, for me, it's normal clothes. Like clothes are clothes. I don't care what people are wearing. I don't care about the design. Like I just throw on a pair of jeans, dude. I don't know.
That's
like
how I was too.
Yeah. And
well, but in middle school, I felt pressured to buy the name brand clothes.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't care. Like,
but I felt that same way. And I guess I'm just saying like, I didn't feel a stark difference between the social pressures and the social cliques. And I think I was also never like a really popular person.
I also think this is different for females and males.
Probably.
You know, like I don't think dudes care.
Well, there's less accessorization for guys. Like,
right,
like I said, girls have like the purses, the shoes, like even like the hair and makeup or whatever. Like there's more things that you can do outside of your clothes. I think that like help put you into one of those cliques or categories or showcase, you know, if you can afford name brand things or not.
Sure. So maybe that's just a difference of, you know, I don't want to say sexes, but you know what I mean? Like for me, when I'm trying to walk this tightrope carefully when it comes to like gender differences here, but when it comes to how I was as a kid in high school with my buddies, if any of them were like, what the fuck are you wearing? What jeans are those? I'd be like, what? Like, I just threw on jeans, dude. Like, what do you, I don't know. Like, when people say, like, oh, that guy's wearing bootcut jeans, and not, what? The jeans are jeans. Like, I don't know. I don't know what these styles, I don't know. And that's what I'm saying. Like, so when it comes to private school, outside of that, if we're just talking about the values for a second, again, I can only talk about what worked for me, and those values were definitely implemented without overdriving the Jesus aspect. And again, each private Catholic school might be different in that regard, but at least the one I went to, it's not like they said, you have to do this because of Jesus. They sort of said, be a good person.
Well, I also think just the discipline was more severe at the private school.
I still didn't take it seriously.
No, you didn't. You did whatever you wanted anyway. But I mean, like, I remember being like, even though we talked about how I was a goody two-shoes. I was a really good student. I never got in trouble. But I was terrified in some of the classes in high school when I had like a brother teaching, especially one of the older ones who were super old school and really strict, and they didn't have to do anything. Like I had one brother who would just like never even get up from his desk, but he could put the fear of God in you from across the classroom, like without even trying. Like, but I don't know that I really learned that much either in that situation. Like I was just so afraid to get in trouble that I don't know how effective that is as a general, you know, teaching strategy.
But do you see how that parallels going back to what we were talking about before? Like when it comes to fearing God, we don't necessarily learn things. We just do it because we're afraid.
Yeah.
Right.
I learned some things in that class, but I remember most was being scared.
And maybe there's some value to that. I'm not saying that doesn't have its place.
Right.
But I don't know. For me, even though I'm outright saying I'm not at all Catholic or Christian, I don't consider myself to be any branch of the Christian faith, I feel more comfortable putting my daughter in private school. Personally, like I just, and maybe it does have a lot to do with the bullying and the gun violence. It's not that bullying will not exist in a private school. All these examples that you hear about it, it's ramped up in public school. Maybe that's because they just get the most attention.
Yeah, but I
don't know.
I think when it comes to the gun violence thing, I am not minimizing this by any means. You know how I feel about this. It's an extremely challenging and just awful problem that we have in this country. But even with that being said, with the amount of mass shootings that we have, the chances of it happening in her school are statistically still really small.
I get it, but I would rather it be statistically smaller.
But I don't think it's still, just because it doesn't happen as often doesn't mean that it won't in a private school.
For sure. Yeah. But it's less likely to happen in a private school.
I understand, but like that is something that is so like statistically it's very unlikely to happen. So are we going to shape from all the other things that are likely to happen, things like bullying or, you know, dealing with cliques, or which that's just something you deal with.
You're not
like,
going to be able to avoid
no,
it in any
but,
environment.
What do we think about it's because we're not raising her as a Christian or a Catholic? Are we more concerned with the extremely minimal risk that there could be a shooting at her school than we are of the impact or confusion or mixed message or whatever, anything having to do with her all of a sudden being inserted into an environment where that's kind of like maybe not shoved down her throat, but it's like a regular part of her everyday routine is this religious thing that we have never made a part of our life before, and it's not a part of our family. I mean, which one are you more concerned about? Are you not concerned? Do you think that we can just sort of explain it, talk about it, deal with it, and let her make her own decision based on
that? I'm not concerned because from my understanding, Catholicism is the most relaxed in terms of strictness of going to church, and it's very like cultish in the environment, but I'm saying there isn't that aspect that you were talking about with the that church.
Evangelical.
It's not like that. It's people aren't pounding on the door for you to get to church.
Is rampant.
It's a little bit, but it's not as in your face. Like you don't have multiple people. It's a little bit more private. The guilt, and I'm not saying that's okay.
Well, so in the evangelical world, I feel like it's like not even said. It's like just there.
Yeah.
It's like underlying. It's like that's what makes it even worse.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So for me, it's sort of this aspect of I'm not necessarily concerned with that. I'm not concerned with putting her in the environment where like there is a presence of Jesus teaching that's fine. Like you're sort of learning something at that point. If anything else, as an extension of history class, I suppose you can say.
I don't know. Concern probably isn't the right word. That's not what I mean. I don't think it's going to do her any harm.
I don't think it's going to confuse her.
I just think, you know, just making the decision based on, if it's just solely based on we think it's safer because there's less likely to be a shooting at a private school. Like,
it's more than that, though. I know that they implement those core values, and I don't know that that's... I'm legitimately saying it's not that I doubt it. I just don't know that those core values are as put out there and as emphasized in a public school.
I feel like that had the reverse effect on me. Having gone to a public school first, but being a practicing Christian and being a part of a church, I feel like those values were already instilled. And then when I went to a private Catholic school, that I felt like it was being shoved down my throat, and I was told I had to do it a certain way. And like, well, we know that you're a Christian and you're a good person, but you need to do this. Really should go to confession. Why don't you go to confession? And I had to defend myself and explain, like, and I'm not saying that this was a regular thing, like they were like bullying me to try to be Catholic. Like there was also an understanding and a respect there, but at the same time, it was like it was noticeable when I was the only student who was still sitting in the pew and everybody else went up to get communion or confession or whatever, or I was like saying the prayer wrong or like didn't know, like that isolated me, and I think made me have had the opposite effect. Not that I questioned the core values, but I was like, why is all this bullshit so important? Like,
right. It should be noted that I do think it's ultimately our responsibility to instill those values.
I agree, and I think we can do that in other things. Like I don't think just growing up in my church and the way that my family functioned are the only reasons why I had those values taught to me. It was also because I did Girl Scouts,
yes.
I did dance,
sports
I did
and
sports,
stuff. Yes,
all these other things, even summer camps, like learning teamwork, learning just navigating friendships and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like,
this isn't to circumvent our responsibility and to say like, oh, that's what you go to school for, so you can learn these values. That is ultimately up to us. We need to lead by example when it comes to that. So at the end of the day, if she's not attaching herself to the core values of like being kind to people, be apathetic and, empathetic towards, other people's emotions and really look out for people, that is ultimately up to us. And if she does not learn those things, that's our failure, not the school's failure. So I would just like a nice little assist from the school to sort of like, hey, maybe this isn't bullshit what mom and dad are saying at home. It's in my environment. You know?
But if we're saying it one way at home without any sort of religious undertones.
But that's what worked for me.
I understand that, but I'm saying like they're not going to be saying it that way.
Yes, they do. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
That's not how I interpret. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. I just know that when I was going there, it was just be a good person. And again, it could have just been the school I was going to. But
I
it
went
was
to the same school.
no.
Same high school.
In middle school,
Oh, okay.
like in elementary school, it was just be a good person.
Right. Maybe it's because I only experienced it in high school when, students are older, so maybe it's more prevalent. Maybe when your kids are younger,
Right.
it's more basic of just like basic values.
I don't know. I just think there's still a sense of innocence as well in a private school. I can't say that for sure because things have changed so much.
Mm-hmm.
When I was going to elementary schools in the 90s, right? And so these avenues to destroy your innocence weren't necessarily there. We talked about this last week. So I don't know if it necessarily matters if she goes to a public school or a private school when it comes to that aspect. But I do think that when it comes to, I don't know, it's a smaller, tighter setting in a private school. I think the teaching is a little bit better, I would like to say, maybe, because you're getting what you pay for in that regard. And no, again, not saying there aren't public schools that are fucking awesome. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are teachers out there.
The vast majority of teachers are amazing and they're doing everything they can.
There's no doubt in my mind. I feel like when I'm paying for something, I'm a little bit more in control.
Well, the class sizes, I think, are generally smaller.
Yeah,
there's
we
usually,
had 30
I think
kids
there's
in our
more
class.
variety of class offerings, at least when you get into like the high school level.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting, though, how we navigate things like, because even of all the times we've said throughout this episode that we're not Christians, we don't practice any religion, we still celebrate the Christian holidays.
No, we don't.
Yes,
we celebrate
do.
the Hallmark holidays.
Okay, fine. We do it kind of commercially, but like, how is she, like, that's going to be a thing to explain.
Isn't it weird that we put a tree in the house anyway?
No, but I'm, right, but like, and when God tells the big bunny to come and leave eggs in the yard.
You're celebrating the resurrection of the Son of God with a giant bunny hiding chocolate eggs. What? Bunny and eggs don't even make sense.
In the first place.
We're talking bunny and eggs don't make sense, but Jesus and bunny definitely don't make sense.
Well, that's the thing, is like there are certain aspects of it that are just part of the tradition.
It's like, we've gone this far. Might as well throw eggs. Make them chocolate. Fuck it.
But like when it comes to the, like, around Christmas and everything, she's going to have friends at her school who are, or maybe they're not going to talk about it. I don't know. But they're going to go to mass. Like, it's a thing to go to Christmas Eve mass or to,
I would say, you want to go to mass? Go to mass.
Right. But like, I don't know. I just feel like that's going to, not that it's not something we can't navigate. I know that we can. It's just going to add a layer of complication to it. To be like, well, why are you celebrating this Christian holiday if we're not Christian? Or we can
just be honest. We can just say we don't believe in it.
Then why are you celebrating?
We're not celebrating the birth of Jesus.
But you're doing all the Christian traditions.
Because it's a good thing to show someone once a year how much you care about them. And it's a good thing to
do that on my birthday.
You. It's a good thing to reward you for how good of a person you've been all year. And we're using this one day to get together as family, to gather together, to spend the day together.
I think it should be more about that than rewarding her for good behavior.
I know. I'm just saying, as a child, this is what she doesn't care about that shit. She's going to care about the gifts. Let's be honest. As a kid.
Yeah, but we could also take that opportunity to talk to her about being generous and taking care of other people and make it more about giving than about receiving. Sure, and being rewarded.
I'm saying from me to you, child, like this is my way today of showing, like, I care about you. You've earned this. I want you to have what you want.
So this is post Santa.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I want you to have what you want. Like, you've worked hard in school, hopefully. You have good grades in school.
You're framing the entire thing about being about her getting gifts.
No, that's what Christmas is.
No, it's not. It's also about spending time with your family. And there are that's what I'm saying, though. There are other traditions that, like, but it all links back to Christmas being a Christian holiday.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't think.
I think you're gonna have to come up with a better explanation if she's going to Catholic school.
I think you're overthinking it because that never crossed my mind as a kid. It was like, let's do this. It was never about what's up with Jesus.
Well, that's true.
Today.
I don't have that perspective because I grew up buying in and believing it and going to church and going to mass for Christmas Eve, and it was all integrated, so it all made sense.
I remember midnight mass being badass.
I loved midnight mass.
Like, they had the lights off.
Yeah, and Easter Vigil too was like that.
Yours isn't like Catholic. It was like chanting and like the lights were off and you had incense and like like Gregorian chant shit. I was like, this is sick.
Oh, so you enjoyed yourself?
No, I just thought it was like the mood was cool, and
Yeah.
then they turn on the lights. I'm like, oh my God, this is.
Yeah, that was always my favorite
lot.
too. That and the Easter Vigil was like that too.
I
The
didn't do
evening
that.
masses.
I didn't do any of that. No, we don't do palms. Like, we just never did it, and that's what I'm saying. It was never brought into the house.
Yeah.
Much like politics, it was just never there. So, in that regard, I feel that it will be pretty similar to how we raise our child. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to reflect on it. We can approach it as if it's history. We can approach it as if it's or a piece of literature that's fiction, right? When we talk about, if she brings home an English study on, I don't know, Don Quixote, I'm not going to say, this never happened, you shouldn't read this.
No, of course not. But I'm more thinking about when she comes home and she's like, why do we say these weird chants before class every day?
That's just what they do. Don't worry about it. Just do it.
That's very dismissive
Get
of
your
something
A.
that she's gonna. But she's engaged in that every day.
But so was I, and I never cared. And I don't know anybody in my class that did.
I mean, I guess that's fair. I don't know. I didn't have that experience until high school.
I talked to a decent amount of people that I've, went to middle school with, and this isn't a pervasive issue.
And all of them were in the same situation where their families weren't religious and didn't go to church.
I don't
they
know.
Went to Catholic. That's what I'm saying.
But I'm
I feel
saying
like
now they're not.
I know, but I'm saying I think you're unique in that your parents sent you to Catholic school, but you didn't attend church or do anything else religious.
Yeah, but my good friend, my best man didn't either. He's in the same boat. Maybe that's why
they didn't bring him to church?
No. And good friend that I worked with, nope. It's just, and we all went to the same school. It's the same thing. It just wasn't there. It wasn't
just
present.
that's what you did at school, and this is what you do at home.
Or they went kicking and screaming to church because it felt like a chore. No one wanted to go.
No, I know, but I'm saying there's going to be literally no connection. Like, at least if you're in a family where you still go to church, even if it's every once in a while, even if it's on the holidays and it's not every weekend, that's still consistency between what your family practices and what happens at school, which is you're there every day, and it's a huge part of a child's life as to what they're
I think you're overvaluing it.
Overvaluing what?
The impact that this is going to have on her.
And I think it's because I'm coming from the perspective of having gone through K through 8 in public school, even though I was a religious person and I was a practicing Christian. And then I went to a Catholic high school and I was like, what the fuck? Like that. So maybe it would be a different impact when I was a young child. It wouldn't be so weird. And I got used to it and it was fine, but it still felt so strange.
Yeah, I feel you. I don't know. For me, it's not something that I'm concerned with. I'm more worried about the quality of the education, the safety aspect, and the security, I suppose you could say. And like people, at least ostensibly and aesthetically, being on the same level playing field, that at least in the beginning mitigates or reduces the aspect of bullying.
I think you're overvaluing that. I think there's
can only base it on my experience.
Yeah, I guess. But you also didn't give a shit.
Nope.
You never did. You never cared.
And it
People
is
thought
our
of you.
responsibility to raise her to not to give a shit about those little things that do not matter.
But it's going to be exponentially harder now with social media than it was for when we were kids.
So, parents, if you have a child around our age, we should note that she is turning 2 on Tuesday, 2 for Tuesday. And if you're in a similar situation, let us know what you think. Let us know what you plan on doing. Maybe this can illuminate something for us. I should note that the area that we live in the state of Rhode Island isn't a bad one. So it's not that we're worried about the quality of the buildings, even though like public school funding has been going
our town
down.
just has general budget issues.
Yes, but I don't think that's unique across the United States when it comes to public school funding.
No, probably not.
And funding for teachers and whatnot. So these are the types of things that we're wrestling with. For me, it's not necessarily a concern about the belief structure in terms of Christianity. I just want those values implemented. Clearly for you, Cindy, it's a worry about the conflicting aspect of home life and school life when it comes to
I said, I don't think it's something we can't navigate. I just think it's something we have to continue to discuss and, be on the same page.
Sure.
All
right. Well, there you go. We don't know what the fuck we're doing. So
if you have older kids and you've already made this decision, please weigh in.
Or if you've been in a similar situation, if you went to public school post private school or the opposite?
Yeah, any combination.
What sort of impact has that had on you? But that's going to do it for today. Next week, we're going to turn the tables. And Cindy's going to be... that was my turntable.
Yeah, that was great.
Cindy's going to be the host and, I guess, interview me for Father's Day.
Yeah.
Sweet. On Father's Day. Cool. So that's on the docket for next week. If you want to get in touch with us, you can on Facebook, facebook.com/whileshe'snapping, on the Twitter @she'snappingpod, on Instagram @whileshe'snapping. You can email us
whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
and you can visit the .com, whileshe'snapping.com, for all the past episodes. What's good about this show, I think, is that the episodes aren't episodic. So in other words, you don't have to listen to an order. You can jump around. If you see a topic that interests you at first, feel free to hit that one first. We don't... I mean, some of the things touch on current events, but they're still actually,
independent episodes.
Yeah. And some of those issues are still prevalent today. So until next week, see you.